You can't be serious, man. You cannot be serious!
Appropriate would be the word. We thought it appropriate because the AFL and the sling tackle and the injuries and the CTE or CTI or whatever the concussion thing's called and the class actions, we thought we would have someone who used to be an investigative officer for the AFL under Andrew Demetriou, and he's an ex-copper. I think it's all right to say copper. That's a generically patronising term, an ex-policeman. And he was an integral part of the AFL who had to decide what incidents went before the tribunal, and there was a bit of controversy about it, and I think at one stage he might have got sacked or was asked to leave, or he stopped. He'll tell us himself. But his name is, and we've had his wife on. I don't know if he wants to be known as the wife of or the husband of.
No, the husband of.
Yes, the husband of, we had a very good chat to Lauren Callaway, and that's his wife. But that's got nothing to do with Rick. Well, she has got something to do with Rick, but nothing to do with what we're speaking to Rick about. So his name is Rick Lewis, and he's a colourful identity, colourful as in legal, colourful identity in the community. So welcome, Rick.
Thank you, John, and good morning, Don.
Now, before... So Don, I want to, just before we start, so it's appropriate, because one of the great crime figures, one of the great controversial police. No,
yes.
Crime figures?
No,
police.
no.
One of the great controversial strong-arm policemen when strong-arm policing was the menu for the day, has just died yesterday, Brian Skull Murphy.
Really?
A lot of people... So I didn't want to interrupt you, but we thought we'll get Rick, just to say he has an anecdote, I think, about Brian Skull Murphy, who was a tough, rough brawler with Crims and didn't gave as much as he got. So is that vaguely right, Rick?
Yeah, that's vaguely right. I never had the pleasure to work with the Skull, but a lot of people did, and he certainly was the old-fashioned type of policeman. The anecdote is simply this. Bert Gordian, I think you might all remember Bert Gordian, great man, a great advocate.
Served on the tribunal, the VFL tribunal.
Yes, as an advocate, yes, for players who'd been reported. And he himself was a policeman, passed away a few years ago, and now sort of the Skull has passed away. So I can tell this anecdote without too much.
You know you can't defame the dead?
I didn't
You
know
cannot slander or defame the dead. You can say anything you like about them. That's a fact.
Yes, so Bert Gordian was checking the books at Russell Street. That's, the property books and all of that stuff. And he was with a chief inspector whose name was Flatpuss. Chief Inspector Flatpuss. And they were sitting there checking the books, and Brian Murphy walked past. And he came in to interrupt the checking of the books, and Flatpuss looked up and said, "Oh, Brian, what are you doing here?" He said, "Oh, I've just caught this crook. His name is," whatever his name was, "and I found him armed with a firearm." Oh, Flatpuss looked up and he said, "Oh, really? What sort of firearm?" He said, "I don't know, I'm just going to go get it." You can edit that out if you want.
No. Can I ask you a question? You said he was an old-fashioned cop. What do you mean by an old-fashioned cop and a new age cop?
Back in the day, you didn't take any crap from crooks, and you dealt with them as they should be dealt with.
And in those days, and Rick, you probably didn't have to, as you sign up to do anything in a government instrumentality, give your pronouns out.
That's right.
You didn't have to identify yourself by them, there, or they, or thy, or thee.
So do you think society has usurped the power or the purpose or whatever of the police force today?
You'll have to ask me that question again, Don. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Well, do you think society's usurped the power or the purpose or whatever else of the police force? Because I saw some being interviewed the other day with a camera and a microphone under them, and, you know, I thought it was an intrusion upon their privacy. They're being filmed with everything they do, whereas I think it's rather intrusive.
Well, I guess society moves on and we get more and more technical with our things that we've got out there, like recording cameras and all that sort of stuff. And we've moved on, we've moved forward. When I joined, sorry Sam, I keep interrupting.
You're the man. I'm going to ask Don a question. I'm going to ask him a question.
Feel
I
free.
didn't understand that, Don. I'm not being silly.
Well, I mean,
what do you mean by that?
Well, you know, you talked about Brian Skull Murphy, the way they... And I was intimidated growing up with the police. I mean, if you knew, you just stayed in line because you knew you could get into trouble. Whereas nowadays, they just seem to flaunt whatever these young offenders flaunt what they do, or they don't seem to have... You know, the court system, the police force, they seem to not be able to do anything.
No, you said they stand in front doing interviews and being
They
intimidated.
get hassled. I've watched cameras.
The coppers?
Yes.
But that's part of it. You've got to be able to, like Darcy Moore. If you're going to be interviewed by the media, you've got to be able to actually say what you're trying to say without getting yourself into hot water.
They're doing their job, either arresting, restraining, or doing whatever on a microphone.
But they have police spokesmen, Don.
No.
Yeah, I don't think Don was talking about being interviewed. I think he was talking about the police wearing body-worn cameras, and they must put on their body-worn cameras every time they have some interaction with anyone, really.
Is that what you meant?
All of that.
Oh, good on you.
Yes, and television and social media, they're being filmed all the time, the body cameras, everything.
Did you answer that question anyhow?
I think we've answered, and we could probably move on. What do you think?
Now listen, the other question.
The other
you
one.
weren't on the... This is intrigued me. I thought you were an investigative officer
We're getting
with
onto
the
that.
AFL, not on the tribunal. There's two
Tribunal.
Tribunal.
Well,
There's
basically,
no R in
Will
tribunal.
you shut up.
Basically, I acted as the umpire's advocate, and I was the racial vilifications officer and the investigative officer. And it was all a part-time job, and so is that where you're heading to? So that's what I did.
So you weren't on the you didn't pass, you didn't sit on the
Tribunal.
No, I didn't sit on the tribunal.
Right.
I got there in the days when Neil Busy was the chairman,
Yep.
and I appeared in front of him when John Hook gave me a call. You may know who John Hook is.
Yeah, Hawthorne.
Yeah, Hawthorne, and we'd played Camberwell in the grand final.
Now, who's we?
We, as in Frankston, where I used to play football.
Yeah,
So we played Camberwell
that's right.
in a grand final, and I introduced myself to John Hook.
Yes.
I got 2 weeks for that.
You got 2 weeks.
Yeah. So then I put my name down at the AFL or the VFL as it was.
How did you get the job?
Yeah, well, I put my name down to be an advocate because the police force had trained me at some stage to be a police prosecutor. So I'd learnt that skill, and I put my name down to be an advocate. John Hook rang me one day and he said, we need an advocate for a young kid from the reserves who's just been reported and he's got to front the tribunal. So I said, yeah, I'll do that. Now, I met this young kid and his name was, Crawford. Shane Crawford had got reported for hitting a bloke called Woods at Collingwood, who later joined...
Tony Woods.
Tony Woods, who later joined...
Hawthorne, yeah.
He later joined Hawthorne. So back in those days, you'd meet with the 3 players, you'd work out a conspiracy, and you'd go to the tribunal. And I went in front of Neil Busy and did such a great job in getting Shane 1 week when I should have got him off, that the AFL then, during the summer period... gave me a call. Rod Austin gave me a call and said, would you like to be the umpire's advocate? And I said,
Did you push yourself forward as an advocate? Because Brian O'Shannessy used to. Do you remember Brian O'Shannessy?
He said he applied for the job.
I know, but once they got the job, Brian O'Shannessy used to push himself forward. He was an advocate in my day.
Yeah.
And there was another police.
Ian Finlay, he was...
And he married a girl I went to school with, Olive Wood. Her name was Olive Wood. Yeah.
So Ian and Bert Gordon, who we mentioned a bit earlier on, he was another player's
So
advocate.
before we get on to some specific cases that we're interested in, Rick, it is such a contradiction in terms, I've got a feeling, because you might think the logic of things that you look at and you use your common sense, but sometimes you are instructed to follow a set of guidelines and principles by people who don't even see the incident and don't know under what circumstances it was ever committed, and you have to follow was it harsh, was it too harsh, is there a certain number that you have to give it? It's very hard to use your judgment on what you think as opposed to what the guidelines are. Is that basically a reasonable question?
That's a reasonable question, and you've got to have a set of guidelines, but they've got to be broad, because I don't think you can replicate two separate incidents. No. There is always something
You've got
different.
to be able to use your discretion.
That's right. You've got to use, I think it's called the doctrine of common sense. And you've got to have played the game. Not that I played league football, but I played enough of the game to understand it.
Yes.
So I think the what's he called, the CRO, or the match review officer, I think he does a reasonable job, and he does a consistent job. But the penalties are very, very minor as to when I was the umpire's advocate. I mean, you'd get 4 weeks for striking someone. You'd
get 4 weeks for striking someone now.
Well, it'd have to be fairly severe.
Well, geez, there's not too many striking instances gone on. I think that's gone right out of the game.
Yes, yeah. But you'd be involved in a melee back in my day, and the fines were through the roof. I mean, they were $10,000, $5,000.
Well, the clubs were paying that, weren't they? Not the players.
Yeah, if it was the players' responsibility, but the clubs probably paid it.
Yeah. So one of the more infamous cases you're involved in was the Jonathan Brown saga, where I think you came on the footy show, didn't you? And we spoke to you for seemed like an hour about the Jonathan Brown affair. And I think, roughly speaking, he was charged with rough play during one of the breaks, wasn't he? While the game was going on, and you argued that, well, you couldn't get charged with rough play if actually play wasn't happening. And the AFL wanted you to amend. Is that
that's broadly it. Ian Anderson was the general manager of football operations at the time. It was his first year, and as I do, I give him a bit of a rundown every Monday when the tribunal's set, and I tried to tell him that rough play doesn't happen at the quarter-time break, and that's what Jonathan Brown's been charged with. That's what he had to front the tribunal, and he wasn't that interested, and he moved on to something else.
Did you say that with your tongue in cheek, or you genuinely thought that you can't be charged for rough play if the game is not in motion?
No, you can't play. The word play is defined in the laws of the game.
Right.
So, and it says you got to be involved in handballing and all that sort of stuff. So it was really quite easy. And he argued then, after Jonathan Brown got found not guilty, Anderson said, well, you should have amended the charge to misconduct. And I said, that's a brand new charge. You can't lob at the tribunal and say, I want to amend the charge, or actually I want to replace the charge with misconduct, because they haven't been prepared for that.
Alter it to fit the
circumstances
the
at the time.
So you don't tell me you got off on a technicality.
No, well, it wasn't a technicality. It was the charge wasn't there. You could call it a technicality, but the charge couldn't be proved.
Should have been misconduct rather than
it should have been
rough
misconduct.
Play, because play we weren't playing.
Yeah, that's right. And it was an umpire's report.
I've got a feeling you took him for a nice ride, and you didn't even believe what you were saying, did you, Rick? Which is what you're charged with doing, is giving the best defence you can to your client.
Well, the best prosecution I did. I was a prosecutor.
No, you weren't the prosecutor.
Yeah, I was the umpire's advocate at that particular stage. the umpire had reported him.
Yes.
Hang on, can I just get? Did the umpires have an advocate as well?
Yeah, I was the umpire's advocate.
Geez, in our day there was never an advocate for the umpire.
No, that's what, when I told the story a bit earlier on about Shane Crawford and being approached over the summer period by Austin, was to be the umpire's advocate, because they never had an advocate. So it was up to Neil Busy to play two roles. He played, the chairman of the tribunal.
Rick, I'm partially educated. I'm happy to say that.
What are you saying? Don's not.
No, he's not. He's even less partially. I'm saying to you, Jonathan Brown was reported for rough play during the half or the quarter time break. Mm-hmm. The umpire reported him for rough play, did he?
That's right.
I see. And you defended the umpire, did you not?
I represented the umpire.
Yes, saying that's correct. And the AFL had to go at the umpire for saying he should have amended the charge, not you.
No.
Please, clear that up for me, please.
Right. I go to the tribunal with the umpire. The umpire was about to give his evidence when the Jonathan Brown's player advocate stood up and made his submission to say that you can't be guilty of rough play. So I had to stand up and I agreed with it. I tried to tell Anderson that the charge won't stick. It won't. It's
and you said
charge.
that against your umpire.
Yes.
So you went against the umpire really for him.
Well, it didn't come as a surprise to him when I spoke to him, the umpire, before the actual hearing of the tribunal. So
you were an umpire's advocate and advocated that the other side dispute what your advocate said, what your client said.
I agreed with the opposition. I mean, you can't. You can't go
fair.
in there. You've got to be fair. Mm-hmm. And one of the facts, while we're talking about fair, one of the first things I did when I took over this role, I said to umpires, you don't have to wait around to find out whether the player was guilty or not. You've given your evidence, now go, because it creates an animosity, as I thought it, between players and umpires.
That's exactly right.
So I suggested them, just go.
Absolutely. So did you get reprimanded by the AFL for that, or did you get sacked for that? Or?
No. I got reprimanded by Ian Anderson. He said, you should have...
backed the umpire.
No, you should have amended the charge to misconduct. Yeah. Well, you can't amend the charge. There's separate charges.
Yes, I see, yep.
So you've got to place a new charge up. Well,
so then I
didn't have the authority to do that.
This is the start of you getting a little offside with the hierarchy at the VFL or AFL as it was, AFL or VFL as it was then.
I mean...
So Andrew Demetrio, he sacked you in the end for why?
Because I went and spoke to Craig Hutchison, and then later on the football show, I wanted
about what?
About why I didn't
about
amend
that
the
incident.
Charge. Yeah, about all that charge. I mean, they suspended me until the end of the year, and you could read the writing on the wall. I wasn't going to be appointed next year, so I got in first and went on the two shows I've just mentioned.
And the other thing that you were involved in, I don't know what this means, but you apparently, during the West Coast Eagles drugs saga, did you not? It says that you had a recording of a phone conversation between Daniel Kerr and his drug provider to get some ketamine, which is a horse tranquilizer, and what was that about? And you just said you didn't get the recording or the phone conversation. What was that about? That was quite a big story in its day.
Let me say first and foremost...
You tidy that up for me, please. No one will understand what I asked you then.
Yeah, let me clear this right up now. I never had any phone call, the recording of a phone call. I mean, that'll send me to Alcatraz if I ever had that and made it known.
Yeah.
So I never ever had.
So what was that about? What was all that about? This was someone overheard. I think this is common knowledge. Daniel Kerr speaking to a drug baron in Western Australia about procuring some ketamine.
Well, you're taking me back, and I'm not avoiding the question.
No,
but you're taking me back a long time.
But what did that have to do with you? All that
I'm
stuff.
telling you, Sam or John, I know I can't remember anything about it, but I'm not avoiding the question.
I'm not asking you.
So what were you? Were you an investigative officer at this stage then?
Yes.
Different to your tribunal role?
Yeah, I did the 3 roles.
You had 3 roles?
Yeah, as I said earlier on, I was a racial vilifications officer, the investigative officer, and the advocate, or they call it
all at the one time.
Yes, and it was a part-time role because, but these things didn't happen every week, Don. They'd happen, twice or 3 times a year, maybe, except for the advocacy role at the tribunal. So I was able to fit those tasks in, while I'm employed at the police.
We got charged for racial vilification. Here, this podcast for daring to discuss why Nicky Winmar lifted his jumper up 30 years ago out of Collingwood, which we agreed with him, Winmar, that he would be the only person who'd know why he did it, and we agreed with him, but we got charged for vilifying a race. I love to keep mentioning that is the most disgraceful court case ever brought against anyone on this planet. So, Rick, please. I want to know why is that in the summary of you in the machine here, the Google machine, that it says, were you involved with investigating the West Coast Eagles and the drugs thing, or why did it say that you were a recipient of a phone conversation? What did that have to do with you in the first place?
Well,
or you're saying you don't even remember that? You must remember that.
I don't remember it, and usually I remember something about ketamine and the player.
But would you be asked to be investigating it in the first place or not?
Well, I could be, but I can't remember. The things I investigated, I've got Chisholm somewhere in my head.
Chisholm?
Chisholm what?
No, his surname was Chisholm, an Aboriginal
player. An Indigenous player.
An Indigenous player.
Yes, it does say dark.
Is that Scott?
Grant Chisholm or?
No, Scott Chisholm.
Scott Chisholm.
Dark.
Yeah.
So that was
Indigenous.
racial vilification.
Yeah, that was a racial vilification matter. And I can't even remember the other player concerned. I can't remember, but if it's in the Google, but Sam, please, Google.
I'm Googling about the drugs thing. Here, there's the police on a drugs charge. And now, so you, primarily, we got you in here today. We asked you about Brian Skull Murphy just because that's just happened, but you have a theory or a reason why the sling tackle should be and can easily be eradicated from the game, or what is your theory about that?
It's quite simple. When you pick up the ball, you can expect to be tackled. So I say this, and you know the players that are around you. I say this: don't pick up the football if you think you're going to be tackled. Either move it on or kick it off the ground and get the play moving. That will stop this game being thrown up by umpires too often.
The ball thrown up.
Yeah, the ball
up.
Yep, the ball up.
Or throw
and
up.
It'll save this congregation around the actual throw up, and it'll also get rid of the sling tackle, because when you look at sling tackles, they're mostly occurring when the player
got rid of the ball.
No, they're mostly occurring around these boundary throw-ups. No one really gets sling tackled if the ball is moving and they're moving as well. It's very hard to do that. it's easy when the player has stopped with the ball. It becomes easier when they've got the ball in their hands and the arms are pinned in.
Yes, but sling tackles are usually can be a incident of spite, because I used to, if I grabbed hold of someone by the jump and they got rid of the ball, I used to throw them into the ground as hard as you could, and had done to me too, long after you got rid of the ball.
Yep. But Sam, what you've just mentioned, you grabbed them by the jumper.
Yep.
And you slung them to the ground.
Yes.
There was one on.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Yeah.
Yep.
When you grab them around the waist.
Fair enough.
Yep. So that's the difference.
But in a football, it's the players taking the rule to the nth degree. Now, previously, when you did tackle and you restrained and retarded the player, that was it. You never went that extra step, which I believe is a very weak thing to do, because we've all been in that position where we are hopelessly, we cannot protect ourselves in any way, shape or form. When your arms are pinned, you are defenceless. And then you are taken advantage of. I believe it is a very, very weak way of showing aggression by the perpetrator, and that should be outlawed and should be penalised. There should be no discussion whatsoever.
But this lack of prior opportunity means...
No, there was lack of prior opportunity prior. It was a ball up. If you pinned a bloke with his hands and he's standing there, you played the game, we've played the game, we've all been in that situation, and it was then thrown up. The players did not... It was just we just didn't do it.
But Don, if you know when you pick up the ball that you're hot, you've got that awareness around you.
Yeah, that's
so
right.
If you picked up the ball,
you got to get rid of it.
You got to get rid of it.
Sometimes you pick it up with that intent, but you do get restrained. The tackle is a good tackle.
Yeah, but there's more of that going now, because they give you this prior opportunity.
No, I think the game... Well, yes, okay, go on. I'll give you my opinion.
They'll give you this prior opportunity. And what you've seen lately is your lack of prior opportunity is getting longer and longer and longer.
Well, I've got a different theory. I think it's risen...
Ball, I've just finished. But the ball is being thrown up. So there's more and more and more occasions where players are picking up the ball and they're not moving and they're getting held onto.
Go on.
And then the umpire takes that extra 1.5 seconds to blow the whistle, and by this time you're putting, you're starting to off balance the player, and he's in a vulnerable position. So what I say is this: get rid of lack of prior opportunity, hit the ball on, or you get caught.
As you played, you can't get rid of the ball sometimes, but I think it's a result of the fact that there are short handballs going on in a group. Though it's the way the game is actually played now, that the players are stationary. They get the ball with their back to the play or whatever. As soon as they get the ball, it might be a 5-metre hand pass, whereas that never existed before, and they're standing flat-footed.
Yep, and I agree with that, and I say this: you could add the rule on that if you receive the football from a teammate, your team has had the opportunity to kick the ball in a game of football. So if you receive a handball from your teammate, why don't we say that lack of prior opportunity does not exist, because you've received from your own teammate the football, who had the opportunity in a game of football to kick the thing.
Jesus, I suppose this is why this game is what it is. There's so much grey.
Absolutely.
And it's a matter of interpretation, and I didn't realise how involved this was until I took a mature American to the football a couple of weeks, and then they started questioning me, but you said this last time, or you said that last week, why is it happening this week? You've got to grow up, and this is why our game will never go international, because there's a thing called interpretation.
And that's the great thing about our game.
I can understand, I think, why you have no idea what I'm talking about, but I'm got this on the machine now. It says this is when the tapes were said to be obtained by former AFL investigator Rick Lewis, but Rick Lewis later and last night claimed he had no knowledge of them. This is 30 years ago, or 20 years ago. He suggested the ABC, which I'm not sure why he didn't sue them, may have mistaken their tapes for those obtained by the West Australian Police. In the tapes, Cousins and his former Eagles teammate Michael Gardner are heard to be talking to a convicted drug dealer about picking up their laundry, which was ketamine. Lewis said he briefly discussed with Cousins and Gardner the tapes with the then AFL Football's Operation Andrew Demetrio 5 years ago. Mr. Demetrio says he has no recollection of the conversation. I don't know anything about it, Demetrio said. I'm not aware of any tapes of any conversation with Rick Lewis. Does that clear it up or not? Or was that just getting
it clears
us
it
further?
up. I've said I had no knowledge of these tapes. We've gotten rid of Kerr.
But why were you involved in the first place? Why was your name even brought up? Because you were asked by the AFL to be part of the investigation, were you? Or how did your name come up in this?
It's a legal matter or a police matter in Western Australia, it would appear from what you've just said, between Cousins and
Curzon or whatever
Kerr.
it is, yeah. Oh, Kerr, yeah.
They're not cousins. You mean Gardner and Kerr.
Cousins and Gardner. You asking me questions about Kerr.
I'm asking you, Rick Lewis, why is your name even mentioned by the ABC? What did you have to do with the investigation?
I had nothing.
Well, why is Demetrio saying he can't remember having a discussion about it with you?
Because he can't. It makes sense. If I can't remember anything about it, it didn't happen, and so too could...
You're not doing a Daniel Andrews on us.
No, he's the...
No.
So anyhow, so you've had a very interesting and a very interesting career, as we all have. So you owned I like this. You owned a shot dogs business that provided hot dogs to people outside venues. You're a part owner of that.
Yes.
What? Hang on. Shot dogs?
Oh, well, it's hot dogs, but it was called shot dogs. This is all public knowledge. So why did you have to divest yourself of being the part owner of that? Didn't you have to do that?
Yes, because the police force brought in a rule that you had to apply for secondary employment.
I see.
And because the
Even though
venue...
you were just backing something. Can't you just invest in something? If you're a policeman, you can invest in something, can't you?
Yes, you can.
You didn't go and sell hot dogs, did you?
But there's certain criteria. And one of the criteria was, and quite rightly so, you can't have anything to do with the liquor industry because that's an area where it's difficult to police.
Yeah.
So when they brought in the secondary employment, you had to apply. I divested myself from the actual business and gave it to my then wife at the time.
Well, what's the liquor got to do with selling hot dogs?
Well, they were outside nightclubs and hotels.
Oh, guilt by association.
Wow, yes.
Well,
these things that come out on Google, it's all innuendo, and they just it's to sell a newspaper, and they put all this other stuff in it.
Well, that's exactly what. See, I make no apology of this, and Don says, "Oh, you get all your information." If I were going to interview people, I go to that machine, that Google machine or Wikipedia, and half of it is bullshit because I know the stuff that's on it about me.
Yep.
But that forms the basis of questions that we ask people, and the very reason we have the people in is so that they give their account of it, because people have a perception that they've read all this about, Rick Lewis, I've heard about him, he had a shot dog place, and this is why we like to speak to
Rick,
people.
Going back to that shot dog thing, wasn't it public service teachers or whatever else back in those days weren't allowed to have a second job?
I would doubt it, but
you didn't really have a job. You just invested in it, didn't you?
That's right. I mean, I didn't sell
it's
the
like
hot dogs.
buying BHP shares. You're allowed to do that if you are a policeman?
Yeah, but it's not involved in the liquor industry. So there's and the security industry
but
either.
You've got a
That's
hot dog
another.
stand outside a pub is nothing. That is nothing to do with the liquor industry.
But they sell liquor inside hotels. They still do that.
But
Really?
Well, they sell liquor in the boardroom of BHP, but you've got their shares as well.
Yeah. No, they give the liquor away, I would imagine. I don't think they set up a little pay area.
Can I wind the clock back a little bit? If you're an investigative officer, now I don't know how, the word in the football circles was, and nobody's really, and it's never come to light, the West Coast Eagles back in their halcyon days. We just mentioned about, Canamine and those players. Why did that ever come to you? Were you around in those days when those players got very big very quickly, physically, and why weren't they ever investigated?
If you say you were around, that is the basis of why I asked you all those questions. If you say you were around in those days and you don't know what I'm talking about, then I'll be... Were you around in those days?
Well, what year was it?
Well, when they were winning premierships.
Yeah, in the 90s?
The early 90s or whatever it was. They became
halcyon
very
years.
big men very quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah, well...
I was commentating and I noticed the difference in their physiques, and it was quite marked. Were you?
You are
why,
a star.
Why weren't they investigated, and why hasn't it come to light?
Well, Don, I only get told what to investigate. So
I see. So you don't instigate. You don't instigate. It comes. Rick, go and look at this.
No,
from the powers
I get told
that be.
what to investigate. I got told what to investigate, and I've never been asked to investigate.
So we've got to take this up with Curly Austin.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I don't know whether drug testing. I can't remember whether.
Well, there was drug testing back in those days because, this is bad, isn't it? The ruckman who was at Richmond, who was on steroids, started at baseballer. Right. He started at Footscray.
Yeah,
and went to Richmond. Oh God! And he was a ruckman. He got rubbed out for steroid use.
Well done, Johnny Locko.
It wasn't Chalmers.
Yeah, it was.
It wasn't. That wasn't his name. He was a very good junior baseball player. Could have played in America. And he was a good footballer, a ruckman. Anyway, so those drug things, they were investigating drugs back then, Rick, the AFL, and they rubbed the player out because of it. And it finished his career, actually.
Well, they never asked me to.
No.
And I'm not here to avoid anything. If I've investigated, I'll let you know. Yeah. It's a long time ago, though.
So it's 1992 to 1994. It says they won 4 AFL premierships. 92, 93.
Who won 4?
Well, is that what it says here? The West Coast Eagles premierships. They won 4. 92, 80, 94, 2006, 2018. Were you around in 1992 or 1994 investigating these things? You wouldn't be that far long ago, would it? Maybe
94 to 2004, I was at the...
Oh, you just on the end of it was.
Yes.
You just missed out.
Isn't that fortuitous?
Yeah. Justin Charles was that man's name who played at Footscray and Richmond. Right. Justin, and he was a good baseballer.
So apologise to Mr. Chalmers. Wasn't him at all. It was Mr. Charles.
Well, isn't he the
Locko said, John said it's Charles. It's Chalmers. I said Chalmers was up on a drug charge. No, if you're listening, Mr. Chalmers, we're taking that back. It wasn't you at all. It was we misspoke. Oh shit! So you weren't on the end of the drug saga at the West Coast.
No, but Justin Charles rings a bell.
Did you investigate him?
That was in the 80s. That was well before your time.
Was it?
Yeah, well before your time. So.
Oh, you're a star.
He must have been infamous, and that's why.
Well, would you? Will I ask you about anything else that was on the Wikipedia?
On the Google?
Yeah, because some of it's you might feel embarrassed about some of it.
No, it's...
You don't want me to read that
it's
out,
carp.
It's carp. Will I say what you're accused of? No.
There's an article written by Houston, or something like that.
I don't know, what it did intrigue me that the 8 trucks that Shot Dog had... They moved them from the premises of the Palace nightclub the night before it burnt to the ground. How did that happen? Is that true?
I think the record shows it was about a week before it burnt down.
But you weren't involved. I know you weren't involved, not certainly in that, but you weren't in, you divested yourself. Geez, that read beautifully. Yeah, the 8 trucks were moved the night before the palace burnt to the ground. It's fantastic. Jesus, Rick, that's tremendous. Now, do you go to the football? Do you bemused by the game? Don said he watched a bit of it yesterday. Did you watch any of the game yesterday?
Yes, and I loved it. It was a contest through and through. And what I love about football, if it's a contest, it doesn't matter whether it's Rise seconds versus Sorrento seconds.
Doesn't matter if there's high marks or long kicks, as long as it's a contest.
It's a contest,
yeah. No, fair
Probably
enough.
like the one I'm having at the moment.
So, Rick, what is your the greatest, fondest or most controversial moment while you've been an advocate for either the umpires, racially speaking, or with the players' advocate? If you give us some anecdotal things some tidbits that we might enjoy. Who have been some of your more notable clients?
The Kevin Sheedy. Kevin Sheedy waving
that.
Oh no, the slitting of the throat. That's one.
That's right.
No, that was Mark Williams, wasn't it?
No, it was Kevin Sheedy.
Oh no, Mark Williams
100%.
held his
So
tie up.
you were asked to investigate that action of slitting his throat, were you? Saying
Yes, and there was 2 players, one from Essendon, of course, and one from another team who had sort of engaged in some sort of hits to one another.
Yep.
And the Kevin Sheedy slitting the throat at half time, I think.
And he got investigated for inappropriate sign saying that you want violence or something.
Probably bringing the
Game
AFL
into
disrepute. Kevin still hasn't forgiven me for giving him a Guernsey for that.
So how did you find him? Guilty or?
Oh yeah, I put it before the tribunal. And
so you saw that and decided that wasn't appropriate, did you? Or did someone ask you to investigate it?
Well, I found that it happened.
Yes.
And
you looked at it?
Yep, looked at it.
Why didn't you say there's no case to answer? Because you thought there was.
Yeah, and...
You take exception to someone pretending to slit their throat?
Yes, I do.
So what happened with Sheedy? What was the outcome?
I think he got fined $6,000. And
oh, really?
Yeah, so he doesn't want to be in my presence.
Back in our time, how would you adjudicate the 3/4 time altercation between Peter Jones and Tony Jewell at Waverley, where they both took swings at one another and missed? How would you have adjudicated in that case?
Well,
because that just got no play. It had a photograph in the Sunday paper the next morning, and we just went on as if nothing had happened.
Yeah.
Do you think incidents are being highlighted too much?
Yeah, as I said with the question before about policing, as I answered that, time moves on.
So society's different?
Yeah, of course, yes. What I
do we think we're becoming too officious, or we're trying to justify our position? You as an investigative officer, was the AFL trying to justify your appointment?
No, not at all.
Well, why do we examine trivial incidents then? So why don't we just let it go on as just?
So would you class?
It's a multi-million-dollar business, and you've got to have some sort of rules. I think you've got to have some sort of
standard to adhere to.
Yep. So
what about this? Do you think this is over the top? I remember this. James Hird came on the Footy Show, and I'm not sure if he was the coach or a player. He must have been the coach, because he criticised an umpire or the umpiring, and he got fined. I think this is right, $20,000. Do you remember any of that?
Do you know what year it was?
Yeah, I'm going to Google it.
Right.
Now, just while I'm Googling it, this is completely away, but you're well regarded for, you arrested Ashley Colston Coulson,
Coulson.
who murdered 3 children? People?
3 adults.
3 adults, did he?
Up in an eastern suburb.
How did you come to do that, and how long had that been an investigation? What part did you play in that besides actually arresting him?
I didn't actually make the arrest, and it was a policewoman actually driving the div van out of St Kilda Road Police Station. The situation was a male had approached the suspect, or the guilty party had approached a male and a female in the gardens near the shrine, and said to them, pulled out a sawn-off .22 and suggested that they come underneath a tree and give him their car keys. And there was a male and female who had only just met each other and they're out on their first date, and they got marched underneath one of these great big peppercorn trees, and the suspect or the guilty party said, "Get on your knees." And the male thought at that particular time, he said, "I'm in a bit of trouble here. If you want my car keys, here they are. There's the car over there. Just steal it." And he said, no, get on the ground. And the male thought to himself, he's going to kill us. Why do we have to get on the ground? So on his way, he thought, I'm going to tackle this guy and one of us might get away. And he said, and it might be me. And so he grappled with the male with the firearm and told his female companion to run away, get out of here. She took about 2 or 3 steps, came back because she was so angry and scratched the actual, I keep saying suspect, but the guilty party.
Yeah.
And that allowed them both to run away. He chased after them for 100 metres or so. They're yelling and screaming. A couple of security guards guarding the old Prince Henry Hospital heard this, ran across St Kilda Road. The male saw them and he actually fired a shot at one of the security guards. He had a big bunch of keys on his belt and the bullet struck the keys. So
the old Bible analogy, up in your breast pocket. Yeah.
So then the divisional van was called to the scene, a policewoman and another constable. She saw the suspect, got out, drew a firearm and said, "Get to your knees." And he did. And then I was in the CIB at the time. We got called to the job. We were about half a minute later, and the suspect by this time was handcuffed. And then I did the investigation into the matter that had just occurred and had to take out warrants, get the firearm and the other half of the firearm that he'd sawn off, and interviewed him most of the night. And in the morning, the homicide squad turned up because they, when a bullet comes out of a barrel, leaves a score mark. They'd seized the firearm at the scene when we had it, and they'd worked out that score mark on that bullet was the same ones they'd recovered at the scene of the at the murders.
And of course, the unintended consequences of all that is the trauma that someone like the policewoman and you are involved when you actually have someone fire a gun at you and you have to fire back. I mean, it's like when those 4 people were killed in that accident up in Queensland. They said the dash cam footage of that was, you just couldn't watch it, and the people have to pull them out of the car. It's just extraordinary. But the rank and file don't understand that the trauma.
Sorry, Rick. Can I just go back? So, what murders did he commit prior to this?
There were 3 murders that happened a week before at a house that contained 3 people, and they advertised for a 4th person to come and share the rent. It was up Ringwood Way or up that way, Burwood. It was up in Burwood, just an ordinary situation, and he.
This is not the bloke that was living on the yacht or
That's
down at
exactly him, down
the
at Hastings.
Marina.
Yes, that's him.
Ah, now I remember. Yeah, okay.
And why did he shoot him? He asked for someone to come along
He.
to share the cost of...
Yeah. The people that lived there, the deceased, had advertised for a flatmate. He answered it and killed him.
But
Seriously.
But he was living at Hastings in the marina on the boat. So
on the boat with
he was a serial killer, in other words. He had no intention of moving to Burwood.
No, well, one would imagine he's just gone there to...
I remember that.
Because why would you take a firearm there?
Yeah.
What was in it for him? Was he trying to rob them or something? Who knows?
I don't know. It's the same as well, one would have a strong suspicion that those two people in the park were going to be murdered.
Uh-huh.
But you talk about, the trauma police have to face, and ambulance officers, fireys as well.
Yep.
There's a lot of people that go out with PSD, they can't handle it.
Yep.
But I did 44 years in the police force, and I never had a bad day because I just treated it. Look, I had a lot of fun. Met
Do
a
you
lot
become
of good
immune
blokes.
to it, Rick?
No, I don't think you ever come immune to it. One of my last jobs was I don't know if you're going to put this in, but
Mate, everything goes in. We don't edit anything.
Oh, they
So
do?
before
Oh,
you
well.
slander anyone, you can't slander the dead, but before you built anyone, we're all in trouble if you do that. So go ahead.
One of my last jobs is I'd been sent back to uniform because I was getting to the end of my career, and one of the last jobs...
Hang on. That'd be a demotion, wouldn't it?
No.
Are you a troublemaker? Because...
Well,
Shut up, Don, please.
Well, I think he is. He was a detective. Now he's in uniform. You on the beat?
no, I was a supervising sergeant. But anyway, one of the last jobs we had was during COVID, and a male person had decided to commit suicide, and he's jumped in front of a train at Sandringham.
Yeah, good.
But he's then hit the train coming in. He's hit the outbound train, and then that's pushed him into the inbound train, and that was a mess after all. And you got the undertakers coming down to collect everything and
Collect the body parts from all over the railway tracks.
Yeah, and that's hard. I don't know how the undertakers do it, but I gave them a hand with it, and I found it very, very hard. And that was after.
Tell me
44
something
years.
that's always intrigued me about the police. They've got to speak, and you've got to speak as well. I would have said that was a man. You called him a male. They've got to... Are you people taught or instructed in how to speak? Because there is a certain speak with the police department when they're being interviewed.
Yeah. Why would you say that?
Well, you just said it, a male. I would have just said it was a man. But you said a male.
Don, that's one and the same thing, my man,
Deceased.
please.
They use the word deceased a lot, the deceased.
Yes.
Well, it softens it a bit, rather than saying a bloke is dead because a train ran over him. A male was deceased.
A man jumped in front of the train, or
Yeah,
You're right, Don. I do that.
no. You're
But
not.
you do it
no.
subconsciously.
I'm not. I'm not being
I know,
critical. It's
I
fascinated me that
Yeah.
the police have got a certain speak. And
Well, it's because you present stuff. You present evidence at court, and you can't say, "Oh, there was this
Rick,
bloke."
this has been the most disjointed interview, but good. Don't worry about that. Been fascinating. It's been disjointed, not because of you, because of us. And I'm finishing off on this.
Before you finish off, can I just say one thing off the cuff? You mentioned that my wife was here 3 or 4 weeks ago.
Yes, Lauren.
no, not months ago,
Yeah,
wasn't
no,
she?
she wasn't. She was here a month ago.
Yeah, a month ago or something,
Yeah.
and she's the Assistant Commissioner for Family Violence.
Yeah.
And she didn't quite get her point across, so I'm going to try.
Is that our fault? Probably.
Oh, yeah. Your
I'm going to ask you a
research says
question
it all.
about you and your wife too, about her. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, but she wanted to get over to you. You've probably got a predominantly male audience?
No.
Well, good. You've got females as well.
My word.
Oh, no, and all other
And everything else.
LB, we got the alphabet genders with us, the LBGTQ plus, all that stuff. Don't worry, non-binary.
Yep.
Go ahead.
What she was trying to get across is that family violence or any type of violence against women or men, it's got to be called out. There's too much of it going on, and it's got to be called out. So I encourage all the listeners that if you know of family violence, or you commit family violence, or you're the victim of family violence, please call it out.
There's no. Now, can I ask you a question?
Surely we made that point. Either Lauren did, or surely we didn't neglect making that point, did we? Because that would be a dereliction of our duty if we hadn't said that.
Yeah.
But that would be. I'd be disappointed if people thought we weren't calling that out.
Well, perhaps I can call it out again.
Yes, call it out again.
Okay.
Now listen. You're a copper. How do you go?
Was.
It was. Okay.
Policeman,
now, how would you go in days gone by? Now, Lauren is making policy, and to me, I thought, gee whiz, you're going a bit soft here, Lauren. You know, in days gone by, the cop would go around and say, listen, if you hit that woman, you know, we'll come back. Now, she is advocating nice. How do you relate to the domestic situation that she is advocating?
Well,
do you understand that question?
Yes, I do.
Right,
and Don's going back to when dinosaurs used to run around. You know, we're moving on, so it's all got to be recorded, and so that you can put stuff before a magistrate. And you can record it. You can say how many times a male has been involved in this sort of stuff. Look, males move from one relationship to another relationship to another, and the history is all there.
But you could, in the days gone by, just gone around and said, don't do that again or we will come back. Yeah. And things would be sorted out.
Yeah, and if they...
9 times out of 10 maybe, Don. But
yes,
the
if it
one
wasn't
that doesn't
sorted
get
out,
sorted
they'd be
out...
blamed for not taking action.
Yeah, that's exactly right. The one that doesn't get sorted out and leads to a homicide...
And litigious litigation. I'm going to finish on the football note, just tidying up another thing I erroneously said. The Essendon captain James Hird must pay $20,000 for criticising umpire Scott McLaren. He in 2004, so he came on the footy show. That's an excessive penalty just for saying he didn't think Scott McLaren did a very good job, isn't it? Or is that one of the rules and standards that you must not overstep?
All right. I don't make that decision to fine him that amount of money. That is the tribunal's role, made up of 3 people.
Were you part of that? No, you weren't there in 2004, were you? You were.
Yeah, I was.
Did you find that he should answer that charge?
No, I didn't.
No, you weren't involved in that?
I wasn't involved in that.
What have you learned about today's chat, Rick, that Don and I are so unprepared with anything we speak about, but we rely on the people that we get on to tell us how it was and how it is. Don, shut the fuck up. How long, Rick? It's been going for an hour, Don.
Well, we'll go for a little couple more minutes. The Lewis family, it's known down in the Frankston area. Your brother Greg represented Australia. Yeah. You're a very gifted sporting family.
Yeah, did I say earlier on? Yeah, well, not so much me. I was a battler, but Greg was being
you were invited. You told me, and I don't remember, you were invited to Hawthorn, and apparently I ran through, push your side on a 400-metre run or something. Mm. So you must have been a fair footballer. Your brother was a good runner.
My elder brother Peter, he had a couple of games with Richmond Reserves. My father played with Richmond for 3 or 4 games during the war period. My younger brother Jeff, he's 68 and he's still getting out on surfboards and surfing.
Really?
Tamsin's my niece, Tamsin Lewis. I coached Rye Football Club when I was 22, and that was obviously too young. You can't do that. Played a few games with Frankston. I was lucky enough to play in the 1978 grand final, which put us into First Division.
Right, now Don, this is Rick Lewis. This has been Rick Lewis, and he is the husband of Lauren Kellaway, who both of them insist that we make the point that domestic violence must be reported. If it hadn't been made clear a month ago, we are making it clear now because Rick has said this. He was an AFL advocate. He was an umpires advocate. He was a racial and vilification advocate for Indigenous people or anyone else that thinks they've been vilified or had racism performed against them. So Rick, we really appreciate you coming in. It's been most fascinating about your role as football, part of football and part of the Coppers. So thank you very much.
Cheers, guys.
You
Thank
Cannot
you.
Be Serious.